I don't think we'll ever get to the 2024 election. I think things are going to implode in Washington before then. I think our economic financial condition is fragile. It's going to come home to roost in ugly ways.
Colonel Douglas McGregor, one of many, delivering a message contrary to the meaning of Independence Day, but one absolutely critical to hear because over the next year, we may not see another like it. The warning signs are there, the indicators are there, and we're going to cover as many as we can today to make sure that while we go out and before we go out, we have reason to celebrate. But we also have reason to never forget those that allowed us to have this Independence Day. And we love you all. And we appreciate everything you've done. And that is why we sit here and we fight to defend that it continues. And that is what we're going to cover today. Now, before we do, if you haven't subscribed to Lisa's channel, please make sure you're still subscribed. If you're new to the channel, it's just a click away. If you haven't subscribed to mine, Lisa will put a link above. And then, in honor of this Independence Day, and to assure we are independent, you are independent from mainstream media, which you need to be because you won't get these storylines anywhere else, get to restrictedrepublic.com today. Use discount code INDEPENDENCE. $4 a month. For 2 years, 14 days for free, because they ain't going to give you this anywhere else anymore. You saw Macron. The minute anybody does anything that the ruling elite disagrees with, they silence it. If you are not on an independent media platform like Restricted Republic, you need to be. Get independent from the mainstream media. Join us today at monthly checkout. Put in independence, $4 a month for 2 years. Plus 14 days for free. And you'll hear news like you never heard it before. No commercials, no sponsors, no advertisers, beholden to no one but ourselves and you, our audience. Get over there today. But now let's get back to this broadcast. I know. It's Independence Day, and I will barbecue for you, I promise. We will grill hot dogs and bratwurst and hamburgers, and you will get them all. That is why you're trying to make me rush. Independent journalism. Unique in its own way. Hop that. He was not going to let me get started on this broadcast, so we had to take care of it, but we start with this again. We know that no one ever seizes power with the intention of relinquishing it, but we have so much more to report on. The podcast you just saw, Patrick Bet-David was on there. He was the interviewer. The interviewee was the Colonel. And what led to the Colonel's statement in this series of information, which is almost in line in what I reported to almost 3 months ago because I saw this coming some time ago. 2024 strategy to have Newsom replace Biden. I know, shocker. If you watch my broadcast, you know I reported on this many, many moons ago. Have Newsom go around defending Biden, selling Biden's record. That shows loyalty. Other Democrats would accept that. Have him constantly attack DeSantis because the Democrats believe DeSantis will be the only one standing by the time the election comes around. They fully believe that they will have Trump out of the way. If Biden doesn't step down, have mainstream media attack him, which is happening right now. After we reported on that it would happen. Once Jill notices these endless attacks, they'll have a private meeting. She'll talk to her husband and say, look, it's time to step down. We got to save face. Our family needs protection. With all the new testimony coming out against the Biden family, with all the facts and evidence coming out, eventually they'll step down because if they don't, those make it to trial, make it to courtroom, make it to public record, and then they're in jeopardy of a lot more falling apart. Multiple documents showing him as modern FDR. Massive Simon & Schuster book deal already in the wings. He'll make plenty after the presidency. Why does he want to put himself through the abuse any further? Jill will convince him of that. Defend his legacy and be pardoned by Newsom if the poop hits the fan. Of course, that would happen. So he could choose one of the following options to step down. He can make it due to his health. He can make it due to his family. It's a good time. We'll go spend time with the grandkids. We fixed everything Trump broke, and now it's time for someone else to do it. Edify Newsom as being loyal to Biden, unlike DeSantis not being loyal to Trump. You see that playing out. In order to prevent Kamala from backstabbing, let her become the first female president for a split second when Biden steps down. Of course, Hillary would lose her mind. Of course, the Democrats will never allow that to stand. They'll take care of that very quickly, making sure to move her out of the way. Divide DeSantis and Trump camp to make sure MAGA doesn't vote for DeSantis, which they're doing now. They're allowing Trump to stay in the spotlight because he will continue to attack DeSantis, which will split DeSantis if he's the only person standing from the MAGA base. You divide enough votes, and guess who's going to win the election if the election happens? The Democrats. Newsom becomes number 48, not number 47. That's what tripped off the statement. But Colonel Douglas Macgregor goes further.
I think we're going to end up in a situation where we find out the banks are closed for 2 or 3 weeks and nobody can get into them.
You think so?
I think we're going to run into something like that, yeah. I also think that the levels of violence and criminality in our cities is so high that it's going to spill over into other places in society. People that normally think they can live remote from the problem are now beginning to be touched by the problem.
I'm going to stop him there for a minute. It's one of the most intelligent statements he makes in this entire broadcast, in my opinion. Those who believe that they can live remote from the problem, those who kind of put their head in the sand, pretend like nothing exists until that problem comes full circle and hits them right in the back of the head. And we're seeing that happen now because when you take down banks, you can't hide from that. You can't hide a lot from a lot that's happening right now. And that could change the landscape of everything for all of us that didn't expect how many Americans would just roll over in the face of adversity, be quiet, don't say a word. Because it's not really hitting me that bad right now. Of course, you and us think a lot further in the future. But I'm going to let him continue here for a moment.
I think Ukraine is going to lose catastrophically. It's going to be a complete collapse. And that, too, is going to have an effect here at home because people are going to say, well, wait a minute. Everybody told us Ukraine was winning. Everybody told us X, Y, and Z. I mean, it's sort of the Russian hoax on steroids. All of those things are going to come together or converge in some way that's going to prevent us from reaching, the status quo. Oh, another election. Oh, another set of campaigns and so forth.
Man, I'm telling you some monster statements. It's going to ruin the status quo. Even if the election happens, it won't be a traditional election because the United States of America will have been rocked by something. He points out many variables. Let's go into what that something is. You heard him, of course, reference who is winning the war in Ukraine. Many experts, of course, all divided on that outcome, especially now. It has been 15 months, this on Business Insider, since Russia launched a full-scale attack on Ukraine. But who is winning the war? The answer is certainly not straightforward. Well, it was a few months ago. American public. It was reported to by the mainstream media that Ukraine was in a staunch lead. Russia was crumbling. Then we see Russia strife internally. But now this report saying the answer is not straightforward, according to 4 experts who spoke to the Insider. It is also heavily dependent on the outcome of Ukraine's long-awaited counteroffensive, which is still in its early stages. Well, will that counteroffensive be simply Ukraine, or will it involve more U.S. engagement? Because we are always there to defend, as they term it, democracy. But you see, democracy took a break in Ukraine, didn't it? Ukraine to hold elections after the war ends, says Zelensky. He emphasized that according to Ukraine constitution, no elections could be held in the country while martial law remains in effect. And that has been, the fodder of conspiracy theorists here in the United States themselves. Now, hasn't it been? But you see, all I'm doing is showing you realities that were alleged conspiracy theories, but outside, in the universe outside the United States, are suddenly coming true day after day. Things that should never happen are happening. What country can preserve its liberties if its rulers are not warned from time to time that their people preserve the spirit of resistance? The owner, in my opinion, of Independence Day, Thomas Jefferson himself, but he said many things, hasn't he? Especially this one, The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. Very famous quote, except it was used by Biden in a way that should have sent chills up everyone's spine. Remarks by President Biden at a campaign reception, June 20th of 2023, and this quote can never be forgotten. This, in my opinion, changed the government from being of we the people to against we the people. It was a very simple statement, but one of the most dangerous statements ever made by a U.S. president. So what's the deal with the idea that it's an absolute? You know, I love these guys who say the Second Amendment is, the tree of liberty is water with the blood of patriots. Well, if want to do that, I have to read his quote here, you want to work against the government, you need an F-16. You need something else than just an AR-15 anyway. Ha ha, he laughs. That statement should never have been made. This is the great republic of the United States of America. Millions have died to protect it. Our forefathers, the great risks they took and perils they looked at to assure that this union, the Constitution, stood above all others, making this the greatest nation in the world, was stepped on by a statement so incendiary, so wrong. It's why we may never see an Independence Day like the one we're seeing today, but they've been working on this for some time now, haven't they? DHS intelligence report warns of domestic right-wing terror threat. Well, I guess you can consider this document, because if all the rules and regulations that existed today existed then, this document would have probably landed you in prison, or worse. Extremist personified. But yet, a day today, we all need to celebrate and hope that we see another, even though the likelihood in that window is shrinking. 7 facts. This is about allthatinteresting.com. That's where this is from. 7 facts about the Founding Fathers that'll make you rethink American history. You see, they're even shredding history before our very eyes. The growing right-wing terror threat. Well, I guess it's been growing in a long, long time now, hasn't it? Since the very signatories of the Constitution touched that very landmark, critical, and important document. NSA surveillance exposed. Imagine if it was now back then. Man, they would have never been able to escape. There's nowhere they could have hid. There's nowhere you and I can hide anymore. Not in this, what we're to believe is we the people. This is why many, like the Colonel, are giving warnings, because they're watching our republic move into something entirely different. One that is monitoring its people, classifying its people, but more importantly, classifying its political opposition. Remember the DH right-wing extremist report? House Minority Leader John Boehner called the report offensive and unacceptable, and demanded an explanation for why she has abandoned using the term terrorist to describe those such as Al-Qaeda who are plotting overseas to kill innocent Americans, while her own department is using the same term to describe American citizens who disagree with the direction Washington Democrats are taking our nation. This is very black and white. Too black and white for some, because it's too hard to swallow. That your government would label you a terrorist. How many that you know who report have now been shunned, pushed from platforms, silenced on social media because they had a dissenting opinion? Because the federal government has moved into state governments, DHS fusion centers portrayed as pools of ineptitude, and civil liberty intrusions, many calling them now absolutely inept, waste and civil liberties intrusions, according to a scathing 141-page Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs Permanent Subcommittee on Investigation report. But does it matter? Does it matter when there is absolute anger over Supreme Court decisions that simply put those decisions in the focus of the Constitution? what is legal and what is not, what is just and what is not. But that's not the representation that they want. It isn't about we the people. And John Whitehead's going to give a very good conclusion to this, but America's waking up. What is the state of American democracy as July 4th nears? What did the poll say? In all, 7 out of 10 Americans agree with the statement that American democracy is imperiled. Hate the word democracy. It's what they tend to use in every one of these mainstream publications. We are not a democracy. I'll say that over and over again. John Whitehead, no. A state of martial law. America is a military dictatorship disguised as a democracy. What a controversial title. The Rutherford Institute. Love his writings, love his teachings. So much of what he says, man, could really frame in the argument as to why we state this may very well be the last independent state. When the government views itself as superior to its citizenry, what a true statement that is. Do you agree with that? Can't wait to see it in the comments. When it no longer operates for the benefit of we the people, when the people are no longer able to peacefully reform their government, when government officials cease to act like public servants, rather self-serving, self-interest, big money, big bank, industrial complex starts to run the government. When elected officials no longer represent the will of the people, when the government routinely violates the rights of the people and perpetrates more violence against the citizenry than the criminal class, we watch article after article, they'll release people from prison, they're lowering the standard. Now granted, we over in prison in the United States, I'm not going to argue about that, but is it a fair and equitable system of justice? How many events like that recently have we seen? Hunter exonerated immediately, Trump continually under trial. You see, it is not an equal system of justice in the opinion of many. When the government spending is unaccounted and unaccounted for, when the judiciary acts as a court of order rather than justice, and when the government is no longer bound by the laws of the Constitution, and we just saw that with the Supreme Court rulings. They were stating that the government was no longer bound by the Constitution. They had violated it. They reversed the orders. And of course, the Democrats go off their ever-loving seat. They lose their freaking minds because the Supreme Court ruled in line with the Constitution. If you don't represent the Constitution, you cannot represent we the people. It's a very simple concept. And when the government no longer bound by the laws of the Constitution, then you no longer have a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. What an amazing write-up. There is something being concocted, he concludes, in the dens of power far beyond the public eye, and it doesn't bode well for the future of this country. Doesn't mean we won't see another Independence Day. Anytime you have an entire nation so mesmerized by political theater, think about that statement. Oh, we love the pomp and circumstance. Those videos take off immediately whenever someone makes an emboldened statement, but so much of it theater with no action behind it. Nothing ever happens. I see it in your comments time and time again. Nothing will ever happen. Well, because you're living in political theater that doesn't have real consequence because it's not real. All the world's a stage. Anytime you have a government that operates in the shadows, speaks in a language of force, as we heard with Biden, and rules by the fiat, you better beware. And anytime you have a government so far removed from its people as to ensure that they are never seen, dark money, special interests, lobbyists, behind the scenes, the public never sees them, but yet they are controlling so much of what happens in legislation. The architects of the police state have us exactly where they want us, under their stamping boot. Gasping for breath, desperate for freedom, grappling for some semblance of a future that does not resemble totalitarian prison being erected around us. The government and its cohorts have conspired to ensure that the only real recourse the American people have to express their displeasure with the government is through voting. Yet that is no real recourse at all. Now, you can come to your own conclusions on that statement. If you were at restricted, I can give you a diatribe of what that means. But anywhere else, sorry, folks, you simply can't discuss it. It's how it works. It's why you need to be there. Man, I'd love to go off on that right now. But now let's let Colonel Douglas Macgregor wrap up this a little bit.
Because I don't think Biden will make it through the year. I think he'll be gone. And I think everybody knows that this person, Kamala Harris, lacks the ability under any circumstances to be president of the United States. And then the search begins, and Newsom is the logical candidate for them. He's presiding over California, which is their poster child for the future of America. How deeply in debt is California? What's the state of affairs in that country of its own? It's a catastrophe.
Once again, I couldn't agree with him more. His chilling prediction, only chilling in the fact that we don't know who the heir apparent would be except for Kamala Harris, is that Biden won't serve out his term. We're seeing more evidence of that daily as the mainstream media maneuvers and manipulates against him. You then know they've already been given direction as to what's going to happen. Kamala would seize power for a small period of time, but everyone knows her incapability of handling that position, so there will be another heir apparent, which could spark such a controversy that America could go into turmoil, which could more than definitely impact, well, the future state of events. We know that the Democrats love the state of California, everything it's become. A state in debt, and through debt is, that's right, servitude. Impossible to ever have freedom in a state of debt. Those of us who felt that impact, even on a personal basis, understand that statement. But what is our government doing beyond anything else right now? Putting us in insurmountable amounts of debt. To be beholden to who? The great bank of the United States of America? Come on. That time is long past. No, the World Bank. And once you're owned by a World Bank in the great Republic of the United States of America, your freedoms have now disappeared. And we can never truly have another Independence Day. Hence the title for this video. I know a sombering message, but one actually meant to have you enjoy what we have for today and start thinking on a bigger platform, a bigger picture. Let us help educate you to put this in very concise terms, because they try to embattle your mind in so many useless details so you can never focus on what you actually need to do. And that we will help you with at restrictedrepublic.com. Don't forget, discount code INDEPENDENCE, monthly checkout, $4 a month for 2 years plus 14 days for free, and your mind will be expanded immediately. That's our commitment to you. Until next time, on behalf of Lisa Haven, we wish you all an amazing Independence Day. Please enjoy every minute of it. Until next time, Godspeed and God bless. Justice Knight, signing out.